That's a good thing.
See that old Ford pickup that's parked over there? You can see it. Back in the 30s. You can't quite see it. I parked over there, I think. Somebody did a nice job of refinishing it. Oh, they restored it. Looks beautiful.
All right, I think it's time. Mic's on?
It's on.
We're ready to go. Mic's on? Sorry. No. All right, I think we're going to get going, folks. Welcome all of you to the regular planning board meeting this Wednesday, July 27th. We actually pushed it back a week. First item on our agenda is a roll call. This evening we have Krista Swinton, Jeremy Chubbuck, we've got John Beckett, we've got David Thompson, and we have Mike Costello down at the end. There's a couple absent members this evening. Next up is approval of the minutes of May 18th, 2016.
I move approval of the minutes.
Very good, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Discussion? Edits?
I have one small edit. Page 4, item 2C, sort of in the middle of the page. It says, a proposed land use ordinance to section 18138. After land use ordinance, if we insert amendment, that takes care of it. So it would read, a proposed land use ordinance amendment to section 18138.
Good catch. My question is, do we get to bring back Ruth to make that change?
I hope so.
Let me know what she says.
Yes, I will, if it's legal.
Any other edits? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the minutes as amended? Very good. Just before we get going, do need to designate Mike, you are going to be a voting member this evening. Okay, very good. Next up is our long list of public hearings. First public hearing this evening is an amended subdivision review request by Milos Blagojevic. Thank you. Sorry, Milos. To alter a lot line in the Eagle Crest subdivision at the end of Merritt Drive, tax map 23, lot 7 in the F&A zone. If we could have the applicant come up and give us a summary of what you propose to do.
Good evening. My name is Milos Blagovic. My wife and I own a piece of land about 25 acres on top of Merritt Drive cul-de-sac, and we like to relocate one property line from on account of we own 2 lots there, and we would like to relocate one property line on account of another lot. So to enlarge one lot and make smaller the other.
Mhm.
We submitted our plan. Surveyor has all information and legal description. We have a soil test for a lot, new lot, and we think we fulfill all requirements for that.
Very good. Thank you. Before we do open up a public hearing or get a summary from Evan, do we have any initial questions from the board? Very good, thank you. And before I do open this up to public hearing, Evan, can you give us a summary of
Yeah,
the application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is a pretty, on the face of it, pretty simple matter, just moving a lot line to, this was in the Eagle Crest subdivision. The Eagle Crest subdivision was created 14 years ago, 2002. It is an 8-lot subdivision off of Forest Ave. It's along Merritt Drive, which was built at that time. At the end of the cul-de-sac, on one side is a lot, the 8th lot in that 8-lot subdivision. And then beyond the subdivision were a number of acres, a large area of residual land that was not part of, original part of that original Eagle Crest subdivision. What's being proposed is simply to enlarge Lot 8 from 3.6 to about 7.4 acres. And that's really the only thing before you tonight is that simple change. It is, importantly, there was, as Milos was working through this, there is this residual land, and what was understood now apparently better than back 13 or 14 years ago was there was a private road that exists. Everybody knew that it was there, but I think didn't fully appreciate the status of it. And that status is as a private road that pre-existed state statute and the subdivision ordinance, and under law, that becomes in our ordinance, that becomes a right-of-way that can serve as frontage. So in fact, what we thought was, or was characterized previously as one large residual piece of land, actually is divided by this private road, and it's on two large lots on either side of that private road. And so that was important to sort of recharacterize it and show it on this amended plan as such, with a right-of-way around it. It's private road, the lot lines go to the center line of that road, but it's just describing what actually exists under law and correcting the record in that regard. But the only amendment to the subdivision is the enlargement of lot number 8, which reduces the size of what is now the residual lot number 9.
Very good, thanks. Any questions for Evan? All right, I am going to open up the public hearing. Before we get going, I did have just a couple comments. Noticed on the plan, I just a little bit of confusion because I see the new lot 8 and a reference to a lot 9 and a lot 10 that are created by the acknowledgement of that road, but just a little confusing because you have what I believe is to be the former lot 8, so just a housekeeping issue on a recorded plan.
Yeah.
Just add
And
former,
amended.
so there's no
Yeah,
confusion as to what's new and what is old.
yeah, that's easy to do.
Correct,
I mean,
yeah.
I'll ask a surveyor to do that on transparency
Okay,
before.
not much to add to that, but I'll invite comments from the public, either proponents or opponents. Please step up to the mic, state your name. Don't be shy.
Hello. I have a few questions.
And you are?
I'm Julia McGuire, and I live at 38 Union Street.
Mhm.
I'm wondering about whether there'll be setbacks and building requirements if it's going to be a subdivision.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that she's on the,
Yep, just want to clarify. This is earlier on the agenda,
Oh,
the
okay.
Union Street subdivision, and
Yes.
we'll be getting to a little later.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Other comments on this application? All right, I'm going to leave the public hearing open. Any other questions? This is relatively simple, and it seems like they did, some good housekeeping to acknowledge the road, but I had nothing. All right, last call for public comment. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Evan, minimal comments on this. There are proposed findings of fact.
Yeah, there are, and I do want to note a couple of conditions that I would recommend be added. These are just technical
Right.
things. There is a typographical error in note 6 on the plan. It should be corrected. It says otherwise accepted. It should be accepted, accepted. That's the note that clarifies to the world that if what is now called Lot 9 and now called Lot 10 is further subdivided in the future, we'll have to comply with all standards of existing
Right.
land use ordinance. There's a note that needs to be added by state law. There's a note that needs to be added per state law that allows future searches to track the history of recorded plans through time. That needs to be added. And
Let
then-
me ask some clarification, because you're going to want these in the record, correct?
Yes,
Because under your recommendations, you have right now to correct the typographical error in note 6,
yep.
and you've now mentioned 2 other items.
Item 2 is to add a note to the plan that complies with the requirements of 30A MRSA.
Which is what you just referenced, okay. Yep.
Yep. And then the third thing is simply a standard one, which is the new plan has to be filed at the registry of deeds within 90 days.
Okay, so these are, what you're saying now is the same ones that are in the doc?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Correct, and I had the one request to clarify the note for former
Yeah,
Lot 8.
to be clear, that's the former Lot 8 of the Amesco, Inc., to Milos and Bonnie Blagojevic. That's, Milos, do you know which note we're talking about? Which, okay. There are 2 subdivisions here that overlapped in time, and one done in the 1970s, and then the one done by Milos in 2002, and that note should say former Lot 8 there. Yeah, so that'd be a fourth.
Can I jump in here and, under the notes, while we're fixing things, note 3, second line, located in the forest and agricultural, that should be district.
Oh, yes.
That was note 6,
No, it's note 3.
note 2. Note 3.
Right, it is note 3.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an E.
Yeah, district,
T.
that is another,
District instead of.
yep, good catch. Thank you. Very good. I'm going to read into the record. These are just proposed findings of fact for the board to consider. For the amendment to the Eagle Crest subdivision dated July 27, 2016. Excuse me. Pursuant to Article 7, Section 18-208 of the Orono Code of Ordinances, the Orono Planning Board has considered the application of Milos and Bonnie Blagojevic to amend the Eagle Crest subdivision originally approved in April 2002 by enlarging Lot 8 from 3.6 to 7.36 acres. The property is located in the Forest and Agriculture District on Merritt Drive, and based on all evidence presented by the applicant, reviewing agencies, town departments, and the public, the planning board found the following. Number 1, lots. That Lot 8 will be enlarged by shifting the property line between Lot 8 and newly numbered Lot 9, which previously was considered a portion of the residual land of the subdivider, and that all lots will continue to meet the minimum dimensional standards for the forestry and agricultural district and comply with state standards for lots relying on subsurface wastewater disposal systems. Further, that the proposed amendment properly recharacterizes the land at the end of Merritt Drive, which was previously considered to be a single parcel of residual land, as two individual lots, now numbered lots 9 and 10, divided by and with frontage along an existing private road. Further, that the proposed amendment properly acknowledges that future subdivision or future division of lots 9 and 10, if any, if such future division constitutes the creation of subdivision lots, will be subject to the land use ordinance standards in effect at the time of the subdivision. Are there any issues with number 1? Hearing none. Number 2, streets and traffic, that the private road which extends from the end of Merritt Drive into adjacent property in the city of Bangor pre-existed the state subdivision statute and the date specified in the town's land use ordinance, January 1st, 1978, and therefore, as determined by the code enforcement officer, serves as frontage for lots 9 and 10. Further, that the amended subdivision includes a 66-foot private right-of-way that encompasses the existing private road with a property line dividing lots 9 and 10 running along the middle of the right-of-way. Further, that the right-of-way may be used for utilities as well as access, and its recharacterization on the amended subdivision plan does not affect the existing emergency access rights of adjacent property in the city of Bangor. And further, that the amended subdivision plan does not affect traffic volumes or patterns or impact public rights-of-way. Are there any issues with number 2? Hearing none. Number 3, overall finding as to other elements of the Eagle Crest subdivision, that the relocation of a lot line to a large Lot 8 will not affect any previous findings leading to the original approval of the Eagle Crest subdivision and will not adversely affect any element of the original approval, including standards for drainage improvements, open space, wetlands, recreation land, sewer and water utilities, pollution control, or financial and technical capacities. Are there any issues with number 3? Very good. I do believe we're ready for a motion.
I move that we approve the amendment to the Eagle Crest subdivision at the end of Merritt Drive, tax map 23, lot 19, Eagle Crest subdivision lot 8, and tax map 23, lot 7, Eagle Crest formerly residual property, now remembered as subdivision lots 9. 2, reconfigure the subdivision lot 8 so that it is 7.36 acres, and the proposed reconfigured lot 9 will be 18.13 acres, and a new lot will be created, lot 10, that it will be 48.26 acres, with the following recommendations. There are 5 of them. 1, that the typographical error in note 6 be corrected. 2, that we add a note to the plan that complies with the requirements of 30-A MRSA section 4407-1, assuring that the future title search is recognized that this amended plan supersedes the original plan. 3, the amended signed subdivision plan must be recorded at the Penobscot County Registry of Deeds within 90 days of approval. 4, correct the note on the transparency so that it reads as former Lot 8 in the Lot 10 section. And 5, correct the word district, the spelling of the word district in Note 3 on the transparencies.
Very good. Any comments? All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Very good. Moving on, second public hearing this evening is a site plan review request by Van Sickle, Inc. to allow auto sales at 240 Main Street, tax map 31-1, lot 56 in the C2 zone. Can I have the applicant step up?
Mr. Chairman, I have,
Yep.
my cousin is involved in this business. So I think it'd be best if I recuse myself from this item.
Very good. Thanks for pointing that out.
Good?
Yeah, you're good to go. All right. Could I have the applicant step up to the mic and please give us a description of what you propose to do?
My name is Ed Viner, and I'm here representing Van Sickle, and we're, can't hear me? My name is Ed Viner, and I'm here representing Van Sickle, and we're here requesting expansion of permitted use for 240 Main Street to include automotive sales.
Very good. That was brief. Any more discussion? Or I'm going to turn it over to Evan.
Other than what I have talked to
Okay.
some of the residents and stuff, but they're here to voice their opinions first, so I
Okay.
thought maybe you should listen to them first, and we take it from there.
In good time. Thank
Okay,
you.
cool.
Before I do open it up to public hearing, Evan, you also provided a summary of the application. Could you review that for us?
Sure. This is a proposed additional use at 240 Main Street, the former State Police Barracks property. It is, the proposed additional use is for auto sales. The current use by Van Sickle is for office space and the garage for reconditioning automobiles. The proposal is to add up to 10 spaces for the display of cars on the site. This is a commercial 2 zoning district, and auto sales and repair activities are an allowed use in this district. It's a small commercial 2 district along Main Street in this section of Main Street. So it's an allowed use. It has some of the standards that would apply to this specifically is that along Route 2, the ordinance requires or enables the planning board to determine whether a buffer and screen is needed to separate Route 2 from the developed part of the site. And the proposal does include a proposal for a 20-foot wide buffer that would be planted with trees and shrubs. The plantings would meet the minimum standard for dimensions at the time of planting. The display areas for the automobiles are arranged to maintain a 20-foot fire lane between the building and 20-foot passage for fire equipment, should that be necessary. It provides for parking for employees and other purposes behind the building within an existing paved area. There is no new construction involved, as I understand it, and as indicated on the plan, no regrading of the site, no new pavement, no physical alteration of the site, with the exception that the existing vegetated landscape area, which on the one hand will be narrowed from an existing 25-foot width, which is what it is now at its widest, it's kind of an eyebrow. It will be narrowed to 20 feet along the full length parallel to the road, and lengthened by 10 or 15 feet to about 80-foot length to be coincident with the automobiles. So the landscape area will be completely coincident with the displays. Then there's an additional 5 feet or so of landscaping in the public right-of-way. Finally, there are 4 spaces for display along the side of the driveway and up by the garage, and a small landscaped island is proposed there. So that is the summary of what is proposed.
Very good, thank you, Evan. Before I open this up for public hearing, do we have any questions from the board to the applicant? All right, I've got just a couple. There are shown just 2 customer parking spots for the facility?
You have 9 spots out back, plus
And 9
the-
spots, okay, I was looking at up front. Vision isn't as good as it used to be, but I saw customer parking was called out with 1 handicap space, yeah.
Yep.
In front, and then an additional, and then parking out back, okay. And the sign that showed, the building sign, is that just approximately where the former Maine State Police
Correct.
was on the building?
Yes.
No additional signage?
No, that's it. No lighting, it's not going to be lit or anything, it's just going to be a solid sign. Yep.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, I'm going to open up the public hearing. I would invite members of the audience to step up, whether proponent or opponent. State your name, please. Please speak into the mic. We do have to record these for the record.
Hi, my name's Maggie Tipping. I'm a resident of Page Place. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on the proposed site plan. I have one general comment and a few specific ones. I'm a relatively new resident of Orono, but it's where my husband grew up and where we plan to raise our twin boys, Alistair and Brennan. Orono is a community in every sense of the word. We care about the character and the values and the experience of living in Orono, and we have come together to welcome new residents and businesses to help them integrate and to create a shared space where everyone can feel safe and welcome and feels at home. And in that spirit, I'd like to welcome Van Sickle and their employees to our community, and I hope they'll be partners with us in that community tradition and create a plan that works for everyone. As for the current site plan, I have some very deep concerns about the idea of having a car lot at the entrance to downtown Orono, a nationally recognized historic district. The impact of this kind of use would have on our neighborhood and the ways in which it violates the letter and the spirit of our town code and regulations. I did have a productive conversation with Mr. Viner the other day, and he explained that this site plan doesn't reflect their original intent when they bought the property, that it was originally going to be offices and a location for service and detailing and not a dealership. According to Mr. Viner, things changed when they considered the amount of traffic that Main Street currently gets, and so they decided to, in his words, turn the property into a billboard for their dealership by making it into a car lot. I do understand that auto sales are currently permitted under C2 zoning in Orono, which seems a little bit ridiculous to me because we're talking about one tiny commercial strip that's in a sea of residential areas where so many families live. And I do believe that the planning board and the town council should close this car dealership loophole, but I understand that it's currently and unfortunately the law. What's not allowed under C2 zoning, however, is excessive signage. The code is very clear that a commercial property in C2 is allowed one sign of 3 square foot per lineal foot of building frontage. And the code also makes it clear that all portable signs except for sandwich boards are prohibited. I don't see a way that you can run a car lot in this location and have it act as a billboard without violating both the spirit and the letter of this law. You can't place signs on cars to advertise, you can't put up big sale banners, and I'm pretty sure you can't have those wacky arm and tootable flayed men either. The site plan, we feel, is unworkable, and we feel that the planning board should reject it. We would encourage Van Sickle to reach out and talk to their new neighbors, to host some conversations, and to find a plan that will work for everyone. I, for one, would recommend that they go back to the plan that they originally bought the property and create a property that fits with both the aesthetics of the neighborhood and the needs and values of the Orono residents who live nearby. I provided you with some additional written comments from several dozen Orono residents who couldn't be here today on such short notice. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll read these into the record, but and do invite other comments.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Averill. I live at 265 Main Street, which is directly across from the property that we're discussing this evening. Back when the state police moved out of the building, I began looking at what might happen to that property, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out at the state level who was in charge of disposing of state property. I finally did do that, and they told me that they would check with every state and federal organization to see if there was anyone who needed to use that property before they put it on the market. I came and spoke with the folks in the town office who said that, that yes, that was the case, and that it might actually be sold without the town having any knowledge of who it was sold to, and you know, until such time as those folks were, you know, had to have contact with the town. And then we learned that Van Sickle had purchased the property. And again, as Maggie said, I spoke with Ed, and he said that they were going to use it for offices, bookkeeping offices, and for detailing vehicles that they were readying for, you know, sale at the Bangor location. And that his primary reason for doing that was that he needed to free up spaces that employees were parking at the Bangor location in order to be able to put more cars in Bangor. The town did explain to me that at some point it was allowed for there to be auto sales at that location, but that they were not intending to do that. And evidently in the short time between those two times, that idea changed. I think that when we purchased our property almost 30 years ago, one of the selling points of it was that the state police were across the street, and that it was a safe and quiet neighborhood. And I think that one of the important things that Maggie mentioned was that one of the reasons that they want to be able to sell cars at that location is because of the amount of traffic that comes into Orono on that road. And if you live in our neighborhood and you attempt to leave our neighborhood and go into town, you will know how much traffic is there, because it is almost impossible to get out after about 7:15 in the morning. Ed also explained at the time, and I don't know whether this has changed, and I wonder if it has, that any interest in any vehicle in the Orono location, folks would still have to go to Bangor and buy that vehicle, because there wouldn't actually be anybody selling the cars. They would simply be on display there, and I don't know whether that has changed. But I would just like to underscore what Maggie said about what the Orono downtown area is, and the fact that many people come through Orono and comment on what a beautiful community it is, and that the Main Street Drive is beautiful. And we've watched over 30 years our neighborhood change over time. We used to be all completely residential, one-family residential. Now, right across Page Place from us, the Murphy's old house is a student apartment house, and the house next to it, closer to town, is a student apartment house. Not owner-occupied, but simply student housing. So our neighborhood is changing, and, personally, I don't think that's a great idea. I also wonder, not that I'm planning on selling my property, but is the value of my property now decreased because I have a car dealership across the street from me instead of state police barracks? So these are questions that I have, and love to hear the answers.
Okay. I do want to be clear before anybody else steps up. As it stands, our land use ordinance allows, and it was acknowledged by the first comment, that it is an allowed use. We are not going to change that this evening. What we do have, our purview is to require screening and to try to, minimize impact in the area. I do recognize, as I think most everybody on this planning board does, through our participation in the comprehensive plan, we do understand the value of the scenic corridor, and that was critical to our discussions. However, it is an allowed use in that area. So further comments about whether it's appropriate and, impacts on property values, that's not something that we can consider. It's allowed, so our task is to review the application, make sure it meets all our current ordinances, and see how, if we can minimize impacts and blend it in with the corridor that we've talked about. So just wanted to make that clear, but I'm inviting further comments.
Good evening. I'm Mohammed Musavi, resident of Page Place, and been residing there for about 12 years. And I am speaking here as an opponent of the plan for some of the reasons that were mentioned before me, but I don't think this is a foregone conclusion due to my understanding of the Town of Orono ordinance. I'm reading from this page from Land Use Article 4, Section 18-105. The old state police is residing Commercial 2, C2 district, along with several properties on either side of the property. So there are about 6 or 7 lots used called C2. And I'm reading this for you verbatim. It says, District 2, Commercial 2 District. The purpose of the Commercial 2 District is to allow a mix of residential and compatible. I emphasize on compatible. And in fact, the law says residential. Residential and compatible small scale commercial and residential against a residential establishment. So there are two sentences. The question is the interpretation of what do we call compatible small business, and whether we view a car dealership as a small business or not. These are some questions that I'm just putting on the floor for you to discuss and deliberate on your discussion. I'm also going to read Commercial 1, which is for bigger businesses. Commercial 1 says, the purpose of Commercial 1 District is to provide for a mix of large scale and a smaller scale commercial establishment. Larger scale and a smaller establishment. What I do believe is that a dealership, the magnitude that is being proposed is fitting in a C1, not C2. That's my understanding. Interpretation of the board and the town may be different. But I have to say that let's assume that you approve this plan and we have a dealership over there, and another dealership comes 2 years down the road and says, I'm going to buy the next property. So I'm going to have a hold.
We can't consider, we're reviewing one application this evening, and we can't project down the line. So-
Sure. I'm just asking, the reason is this. This change of Commercial 1 or Commercial 2 is significant. The question is, I would like to see an example of, and by the way, I'm looking at, also have the site plan here. On the site plan, I see 19 cars parked. 19 cars parked, not 10 cars.
Correct. He did clarify that there is employee parking around back. So the plan as proposed is to have 10, and my understanding is to have 10 used cars for sale that would be located along the front, plus 2 customers parking spots.
How many employees are they going to
And
have?
then 9 out back.
How many employees going to? What I'm trying to say is
Right.
that at the end of the day, there would be a total of 20 to 30 cars in there, with the people
Very good.
coming and going.
Very good.
And I share your sentiment that I live over there, come every day, go to my job, my work. Some days I have to work 5 minutes to get in there. And sometimes the car from the other end coming so fast that I'm scared of other cars hitting me. So now imagine you're going to put a car dealership, and again, yes, this is hypothetical, but it may happen. We have 2 more dealerships in there. So the question for town is this consistent with the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood?
Right.
That's the first thing. Second of all, does this fit to have a car dealership and possibly more? Does it fit the master plan of town of Orono?
Well, currently, again, I want to be really clear on this. We talk about compatible. There's a definition of a C2, and then there's a schedule of allowable uses in each district. And car dealerships are currently on that list. And that's what we have to review tonight. We can't judge whether people don't want to look at a car dealership coming out of their subdivision. It's an allowable use in the schedule of uses, and I understood the definition that you cited, but it's currently allowed. We
But this is-
can't disallow it.
Sure, but this C1, this is very open and very general. There's only one sentence left to the interpretation.
All right. Well, I'm gonna ask Evan a question. So we have C2, and we
and the
have
other-
C1. Excuse me, please.
Sure.
So we have C2 and C1, and the question was raised about the scale, whether this meets that. I don't know if the town has any standards for what is a large,
It does, in the C2
Yep.
district, it does.
Yep.
I'm just speaking now from a legal standpoint. You are, you have correctly indicated, and I'll say it in more legalistic terms, that this is an administrative board that is implementing a review based on the decisions of the town council in terms of its ordinance. What Mr. Musavi is reading from is the purpose statement for, and he read it accurately, that the C2 district is, as he said, and B, compatible to meet the purpose statement. As an administrative board, you do not have, as you've indicated, the authority to override what the town council has already indicated is meets the objectives of the purpose statement. One of the objectives of C2 district, and one of the things that's supposed to characterize it, is small-scale commercial activity, and the ordinance includes a limitation in the commercial district of no structure in excess of 15,000 square feet of footprint. And that was to say, yes, you could have this kind of use, but you can have retail use, but it can't be in a 100,000 square foot shopping center. Yes, you can have a certain kind of other activity, but it's going to have to fit within a physical footprint. And I guess, yes, you could have auto sales, but you're probably not going to have auto sales in a 40,000 square foot building with 100 vehicles. What they have found here is within the terms, in terms of land use, whether you review the standards, that's an independent question. Within the allowed land use, this use fits.
Thank you.
And I have to also say that we live in town of Orono, and we have to, when we talk about the small scale or large scale, we have to look at the context of what we're talking about. I have not seen a parking lot with 20 or 30 cars parked in it in town of Orono. If you know of that, except for here, if you know of a business in town of Orono that has 20 or 30 cars parked in it in town of Orono, up and down Main Street, let me know. Even the gas station at the university entrance does not have 20 cars parked in it. So the question is, really, our interpretation and town interpretation of what a small scale is, what large scale is. To my belief, and for the town of Orono that has 10,000 population, the kind of plan and business that we are talking about, I call it large scale. I do not consider it a small scale. Considering it's the dealership, it's a mechanic with a 3-door garage. I honestly, that's at least my interpretation. Now, and finally, I'm gonna give time to others. I would say that laws are laws, but we have to also listen to the citizens. The laws have been created to satisfy the citizen of that town, that region. And if there is a strong opposition, maybe the law should be written or should be clarified as what the small business is, what the large business is. Is this really, these are some of the questions I'm going to put for you to discuss.
Thank you. There is an opportunity, and there has been, again, I refer to the comprehensive plan work. This planning board and many citizens of the town of Orono, we spent 2.5 years going through projecting over 10 years and what Orono might look like 10 years down the road. And we do consider a lot of things, and we're actually, two of the hearings later are actually to address items identified in the comp plan. So there is an opportunity for citizens to get involved. At this point, as Evan said, it's an allowable use dictated by town council, and we can't change that.
And then again, that's the difference of interpretation between what Evan says and what I think. But also I bring to your attention 2 years ago, the existing or the old Medna and Dr. Brule's office were sold, and at the time we were told that those are small businesses. We were told that the purpose of those properties should be create office spaces or compatible businesses in those locations.
Okay.
I don't have any problem bringing businesses to town of Orono, but honestly, looking at this, I don't think this is going to be beneficial to town of Orono. That's my opinion. You want to bring a small business, offices, something compatible, fine. A state police was great. Most I could see was they had 3 or 4 cars coming and going. out of state police. Now we're talking about 20 or 30 cars. I'm sorry, but anyway, that's my...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do invite other comments?
Good evening. My name is Steve Dexter. I live at 236 Main Street, right next door to State Police Barracks. And a lot of things that have been brought up tonight, I totally agree with, and so I will not repeat those points. Couple items of clarification. How about lighting? Security lights? Will there be all-night lights? Like if you go on Hogan Road where there are, you know, car dealerships, there are lights on all night. You can actually see Bangor lit up from Orono because of all the lights, not just car dealerships, but also businesses. So being right next door, will there be light pollution? Is there, you know, a bunch of lights that will be going up there as well?
Very good question. I'll address that one while you ask. According to the application, this is the review of the application provided by town staff. No new lighting is proposed for the site. There's an existing floodlight on a utility pole at the edge of Route 2 in front of the building that is pointed toward the building. The applicant did not install the light. It may have been installed by the former owner. I did notice, because that's a very good question, I did notice that on the rear of the building, it is called out that it says new, and again, I'm having a hard time reading this, but new 100-watt LED directional floodlights. So it said no new lighting, so I'd like you to address, could you address that question now?
Yes, depending on security.
Nope, you have to step up, please.
We were aware of some neighbors that had, were light sensitive and stuff, so what you're seeing there is the front of the building's not being touched from what was there before. Like you said, the spot that's on the pole is currently lit, it's still there, we're not changing that. There were 3 lights in front of the service bays, those will stay on, on the building. As far as the rear, we have considered putting a spotlight out there for security, but we're not sure we need to because of the neighbors that are around there. So that's,
Okay.
it's on the proposal, but it hasn't been decided to. So if you're looking at that specifically, yes.
Right.
But
Well-
it hasn't, it's not a set thing because most of the cars down back will be cars that are there to be cleaned and cars that are employees' cars, so.
Okay. I just want to clarify that. You've heard a concern?
Yep.
And it says no new lighting is proposed, but in the plan note, it shows 2 floodlights in the rear. I don't see any notes in the front that indicate new lighting, but
Correct.
I did notice that on the plan.
Yep.
Okay, please continue.
Secondly, I'm totally in favor of businesses in Orono, and the initial plan of offices and a place to detail cars, to me sounded like it was low impact. But then the concern came when I got the letter that a dealership, but that may be a done deal at this point. So just another point of clarification, you mentioned about trees on Route 2 kind of hiding a little bit, or I'm not sure. I wasn't quite clear on the trees that will be planted.
Right. By ordinance, and I'll ask the applicant for a little more information, but by ordinance, and it's highlighted here, that, I just want to find oh, there we go. Yeah, buffering along Route 2. Land Use Ordinance, Section 18-126 states that buffer strips shall be required of the following widths for the following areas and/or purposes, and it refers to subsection C, along any property line which abuts Route 2 where the planning board determines it is desirable and necessary to protect and enhance scenic character and provide for visual separation between the highway and adjacent uses. Such buffer strips shall not be more than 25 feet in width. And there's a picture in the summary provided to us. Currently, it's just a grass yard with a very small bush behind a telephone pole. The proposed site plan before us shows 5 maple trees planted in that buffer strip with, what, 5 feet in height? Minimum 5 feet in planting?
Minimum 5 feet at the time of planting.
Right, so minimum 5 feet of planting, and then interspersed among the maples are, what was it? I'll have to go to the narrative because I can't read.
Green junipers.
Yeah, junipers, so minimum of 36 inches in height, and it, according to plan, shows many of them. So combination of trees there, and then there's along the side lot, where there's, it shown 4 cars are to be placed, there's an additional buffer strip, or a buffer area, buffer island, where there currently is none. So, again, I mentioned as part of our comprehensive plan, we understand the significance of the corridor. I don't think there's any question for this application that screening is desired, and the plantings that they've provided meet the minimums for the town ordinance.
To me, it seems a little bit like wolf in sheep's clothing if you're going to, put up a buffer so that people won't have to see the business. But that's a little editorial. I guess my last point is, or my last request, if this is a done deal,
Nothing's a done deal.
Okay.
I want to clarify
well,
that.
If this goes through, I haven't heard anything about any kind of buffer between the residents on either side of, like a privacy fence or something, so that we're not looking at 10 cars or whatever from our backyard. I just think out of common courtesy, some sort of fence, similar to maybe like the concerts down by the river in Bangor, nice privacy fence there. I think, unfortunately, that doesn't do anyone any good from the front, but for us who are on either side, it just, it'll make us feel more like we're, our yard instead of our yard plus a business.
Right. And that is something this board considers, so
Okay.
screening for residents. Evan, just during staff review with the applicant, was any side screening discussed?
It wasn't. It
Yep.
wasn't. It's, it's a legitimate point. I think we can, when the public hearing is over, we can go through the buffering and screening standards, and
Right. Okay,
Okay.
thank you, that
Yeah,
has been
and
noted.
once again, I think that a professional building offices, whether it be Van Sickle or anyone else, I think that's good for the area, I really do. And again, the initial purchase for that, to me, is quite reasonable, but I feel a little uneasy about what could happen from this point on, so. Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? All right, I'm going to leave the public,
I know that this is a fire code situation, so I don't know if it's possible, but the current site plan has the entrance coming out.
could you state your name again, please,
Oh, sorry,
too?
it's Maggie Tipping.
Yep.
The current entrance is coming out directly across from Page Place, which leads to safety concerns with 2 cars turning left. I know that's not illegal, but can be challenging. I don't know if there's any consideration or possibility of having the outlet move to the other side, or having that be a one-way, so cars go in that way but don't go out.
Right, my understanding was the access points to that use prior to this application, the curb cuts are non-conforming but allowable, is that correct? 'Cause there's
Yes,
3
they-
openings.
They are legally non-conforming.
Yes.
You could certainly discuss whether any of them should be closed if you think that any of them provides a danger.
Right, I guess part of what I think about, because I've lived in Orono an awful long time too, is, and I've driven by the Maine State Police Station, is considering, there was a fair number of people that worked there. Fair number of vehicles that were parked around back, a fair number of vehicles that were part of the police fleet. So I don't know total numbers, or do I have any anecdotal evidence to know whether there's been any issues for employees for Maine State Police creating, because I know where Page Place is, I know where the entrances are.
I didn't live there when the state police did there, but I talked to almost all my neighbors in preparation for this meeting, and what they told me is that it used to be when the state police were there, that they were very respectful of the residents that lived on Page Place and would often just let them go. Unless they had the blue lights on, then of course everybody would go. And there's also kind of a difference in the safety of a driver with a Maine State Police officer and someone that's test driving their car, in terms of the amount that you're paying attention. So I don't know if like there hadn't been an accident there before is entirely indicative of
Right.
not being future ones, but just if there can be any consideration for the safety for the residents.
Right.
Just trying to
Thank
put
you.
that out there.
All right, yes, you may address that. Yep.
After talking to Maggie the other day, some of her concerns she's voiced, a couple she hasn't. One was that she's on a dead-end street, and there's already people driving up and down that street at higher rate of speeds than she'd prefer with the kids playing and stuff. We did discuss the left-hand turn, and after talking with her on the phone, I talked to a couple of my other employees, and we talked about it. And I don't know if you can do that, but I think putting up a dead-end sign for their street, first off, and adding to it no left turn, so people coming out that end of our exit
Yep.
can't turn left there. They have to go to the other end of the exit to turn left onto the road. I don't know if that's something that can be done or can't be done, but that would help the
For
people at Page
your
Place.
application only, I mean, we're
Can't
not
do it.
going to propose signage not on your property.
Okay. Well, then I could put
Yeah.
one potentially on my property that says no left turn coming out that side.
That would be a consideration. I mean, traffic movement is one of the many items that we need to consider. If
I
that's
can
an issue,
control, I
yeah.
can control my employees most of the time, make sure
Right.
that they do it. I won't be driving their cars. I can control people that are test driving the cars when they leave the building because they go with an employee.
Right.
So we can go out that other way. And as I told Maggie, 99% of the time, at most dealerships, they prefer to take customers on right-hand turns because you're not cutting across two lanes of traffic for safety issues. So typically, what we've looked for a route for is coming right out of there and coming up either to Kelly Road or Benneck and coming across there and coming back if they want a highway ride. So it's right. You don't mind taking a left if you have a stoplight.
Mhm.
But right turns, like we talked, we can do that. So
All
that
right.
we looked at.
So possible signage to divert traffic within your lot is
Yes.
something that we'll add to the list for consideration.
In response to.
All right, so I just want to make sure, we have a bigger crowd.
Sorry.
New comments only, please, we don't want to revisit older ones, just because we do have several public hearings ahead of us.
Stuart Dexter, 3 Fenwood Street, Orono. I had an office at 236 Main Street for 12 years or so, and then at 234 Main Street. One thing that was mentioned, the vehicles at State Police Barracks, very seldom did you know there was any there. Maybe quarterly, they'd have a meeting and they'd have 7 or 8 of the vehicles there, but they were very good neighbors, and once in a while, they'll have a few crashed vehicles out back until they were removed and whatever. But you had mentioned one thing on the trees on Route 2. I think I heard you say somewhere about the sidewalk. There's no sidewalk on that side of Main Street.
Nope.
Okay. I might have got some interference from the airport with using these. One other item that always worries me, I think it said there'd be parking for 10 vehicles or 12 vehicles, whatever it was. I assume it could be more than that under the ordinance. They could put 20 vehicles in there if they wanted.
My understanding is there was only room for 10 vehicles.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it appears there's only room for 10 vehicles, but in any case, the plan specifically says maximum of 10. So the only thing that's being reviewed tonight is a maximum of 10 vehicles.
Did you get that?
I got
Yep.
that, but what about next week? Can
No.
that come back as another amendment and have 20 vehicles?
I understand they'd have to come back before the planning board for site plan review.
so
We're
it-
considering what they've
I know
applied
what
to
we're-
do, yeah.
Right, I know what we're doing tonight, but I'm just wondering what, tomorrow night.
We can't, just like, we can't project other properties and what they're gonna do. Our task with every one of these public hearings, we can review what's in front of us. We're really not looking out for
Okay,
years down the road.
I guess I understand that, but
Yeah,
also living in the town long enough, in other towns,
right.
the next week, there's something else coming in, or another amendment, which, this is an amendment to what you people had decided at another point, I assume. This
Now, this is the first time that we've seen an application for this site.
Well, this,
in a long time.
this says it was an amendment.
It is, yeah, at one time, that word was there, but it got taken out of the public
Oh,
notice.
okay.
So it is,
I get it,
All right.
okay.
unless,
The other thing, and I know it's, again, probably shouldn't be mentioned here, but yeah, I assume it'd be up to the town that if there's 20 vehicles should be out there at one time for some reason, is there a penalty that the town can assess it because they
believe that-
overshot what they requested?
I believe that turns to code enforcement, is that
code
correct?
enforcement would require them to come back into conformance with the approved plan. There'd be official notice, and if they didn't within the specified period of time, then there could be some further action taken. But there would be a code enforcement action
Right.
taken.
There are consequences.
Okay. One other item on, if it comes under this, car dealerships always have a lot of balloons and flags when they're having a special sale. Is there anything that would prevent that in this ordinance?
I would like clarification on that, because the point was brought up from a previous commenter on what's allowed in our signage for that size building. And then they talked about what you typically might see in a car lot with, windshield stickers and other signage. What are the limitations, for these 10 cars?
You could certainly have windshield stickers, but
Right.
it's in terms of other signage.
Yeah.
The flags and the pennants are not allowed types of signs in the town of Orono. I believe that's true. We might want to check with Bill Murphy, code enforcement officer, but I don't think those are allowed types of signs in Orono, and there is a size limit to the total area of signs, and in any case, what they're proposing is a single 15-foot by 2.5-foot sign to be on the wall.
Is it this board's opportunity? We have heard concerns from abutters, nearby residents. Does this board have the option to propose limitations on what you might see at a car dealership? So for balloons and that kind of thing, is that something?
You could certainly say that, but the ordinance already does not allow that. And you might ask code enforcement, I don't know, is Bill Murphy here?
He is. Bill, can we get your services up here, please?
Bill Murphy, code officer. Yeah, I think that flags and pennants and things like that, we don't allow those now. So if someone wanted to come in or they put them up, with something attracting attention to their business, we have to be permitted. And if it's not allowed, it's not allowed.
Okay.
Is that?
Can't, I apologize, but we can't have back and forth like that. I invite you to step up. I believe they just did address balloons, pennants, flags, those kinds of things. That's what I've heard, that those are not allowed, so.
Something that calls attention to their business.
Right.
Would not, if it's not allowed in the ordinance, it's not. They're not
Right.
allowed to do
But-
something extraordinary like that.
Right, but as is typical, I would assume a windshield with, I don't know, what you might see, a year, a price or something like that within the windshield sticker is fairly commonplace, so.
I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about that, and I guess
Yeah.
I'll have to. But just putting a price of the
Yeah,
vehicle,
I mean,
on
I'm
the
just-
vehicle?
Throwing that out there, but, all right. Hey, applicant, you've heard that concern on signage. You've only proposed one. You've heard the ordinance limitation. If you would like to alleviate some concerns, that might make it easier on this board.
In Bangor, they do not allow those street side big banners, which I think you're talking about, whether it's the car, it says sale, or it says we finance, or whatever it says. So we have no intentions of doing that in Orono either. Balloons, it's not, if we had a grand opening event, we might ask, but no, it's not something that we're going to do we don't even expect to have a grand opening event, but
Okay.
no, what signage, what you're seeing on the front of the building is all, we do put years and a price on a windshield with vinyl, but it's
Yep.
not something that's stuck off the
Okay.
cars. No, what they call them, Gumbies or anything floating around. Yeah, no, it's clean. You got 10 cars on display, that's what you'll have,
Okay,
or less.
very good. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. All right, other comments? All right.
Sorry, I got one more item that, whether you people consider, or it's already there, but that's a very difficult, and I think it's been mentioned, cars driving in, cars driving out. On the south side, it's just not like a driveway. It's a very long approach or entrance coming in from Main Street. Whether that should be controlled somewhat. At one point, the state police did have a small island in the middle of that, so that it wasn't all open. So I don't know if there's anything in the ordinance that tells you how wide the entrance can be off of Main. Plus, there's the other side of it, it's a horseshoe, and driving in there, and I can go from when I had my office on 236, it's very difficult to get in there or get out with all of the traffic. And it's one of those things, I used to have clients that would come in that would back out of my driveway onto Main Street. And I'd keep my ears closed and my eyes shut. But anyway,
All right, thank you.
I don't know if that comes in, but I think there should be some type of a, within the ordinance that
Okay.
limits how you egress and so forth.
Thank you, Stuart. Next?
I'm Carrie Dexter. I also live at 236 Main Street. I don't want to ask any questions. I just have something that I felt I wanted to say where I could be heard. I just looked up the definition of integrity, and it says the quality of being honest and having a strong moral principle and moral uprightness. So that's the definition I want to share my story with. A few years ago, about 15 years ago, I lived in Old Town. And at about that time, Casella eyeballed some land and began a process that made me very uncomfortable with traffic and choices that were being made, and I felt sold out, and had it within my power, my family moved to Orono because it's a place of integrity. It's a place that has always put families first. I understand the need for tax and income, but I just wanted to say that as you consider this, we are better than a billboard for Bangor. We have integrity in our village, so please consider that. I know that you said it's not a done deal, and that it perhaps can be done with a working system between both the business and the residents, but it breaks my heart to think that we are considered the billboard for Bangor. We're better than a billboard for Bangor. So I just wanted to say that publicly.
Thank you. All right.
I'd just like to ask one more question.
You got to tell us who you are first, though.
Oh, I'm Debbie Averill. I live across the street from this property. And the question that I wanted to ask is, Ed, when I originally spoke to you, you said that the cars would not actually be sold in Orono, that people would have to go to Bangor to purchase the vehicle? Yeah, when you and I first talked, you said, well, they're going to have to go to Bangor to buy the car anyway. So does this mean that in addition to the bookkeepers and the car detailers, there are also going to be salespeople at this location in Orono?
I don't know that we can control types of employees, though, as part of an application.
No, I'm not asking you to control
Yeah.
it. I'm just asking,
Yeah.
in terms of the sales of these vehicles, do they have to go to Bangor to buy the vehicle?
Yeah, if you could answer that.
No, they do not have to.
Okay. Yep. Very good. Public comments, we'll take a couple more than the board needs to discuss.
Well, I didn't even come here for this issue, but I live at 360 Main Street. I'm Glenn Kaler. I would just ask you to consider what Wilson Street looks like in Brewer before you approve this. It's kind of a nightmare down there.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there. My name's Christina Strong. I moved to town a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted
Welcome to Orono.
Thank you. There's some wonderful people here, and I've really enjoyed being here. I have a 2-year-old son, a baby on the way, and a husband working here, and we're looking to buy a house in the next year. And for the safety of my children, I'm really excited about being in a residential area, and I realize it's zoned the way it is, and so my comments are not really. I just wanted to say that as someone looking to buy a home in this town and live here for a while and raise a family, I am looking for a space that has trees and a safe zone for my kids to be around. And a used dealership is not necessarily where we would be looking for a home. But there are other places in town as well. But just something I wanted to throw out there for
Very good.
y'all to consider. So.
Thank you, appreciate it. Very good, I'm gonna close the public hearing and invite comments from the board to the applicant. We've heard a number of concerns this evening. We've heard about traffic, we've heard about side screening for abutters, talked about traffic flow within the property to address some of the concerns, the Page Place entrance right across. So, fire away.
So I have just one quick question. So in reviewing the paperwork and listening to the audience and whatnot, one question did not come up that I think is pertinent that we should consider, and that is the question of noise. So some car dealerships I've been to have music playing, some have noises, like some of the detail work that you have proposed. Oops, excuse me. What do you have in your plan for noise?
As far as the sales, nothing outside. The offices may have radio going on, the guys washing cars inside the bays may have a radio going on. We're not putting an outdoor PA system, we're not putting sound outside or anything.
Thank you.
Very good. I did realize that I was handed a number of either emails or correspondence from the first commenter. I would like to read these into the record, or there are an awful lot of them. What's your suggestion?
I don't think you need to read them in the record.
Okay.
You've all got them.
We have been provided them.
And, they are part of the public hearing record and will be made part of the public hearing record.
Okay.
And for you, you've got them in front of you to look through.
Right.
As you discussed.
Typically, just so you know, it's very difficult for the board and the moment before an application to receive a lot of information to process. So I appreciate that. We've heard a lot of comments, just a quick glance. Some of the sentiment in the emails is fairly similar to what we've heard. So I do appreciate you handing this to us, and it is now a matter of record. There is on the last 2 pages a car dealership site plan with close to 20 people that have signed on this. And then 28 separate signatures. So a lot of folks have weighed in on this. I believe with similar issues to what we've heard. So I guess with that in mind, I guess one item I'd like to discuss is side screening. This is a fairly common item. I can think of, take a look at Dunkin' Donuts application on Stillwater Avenue, residents to that establishment. We asked for screening there. It's fairly typical.
On the south side of the property, I don't know what kind of bushes or trees they are. We are completely obstructed to the neighbor on the south side.
Okay.
On the north side, screenage fence. When we talked to Evan originally and David and Bill, one of the things they said, that may come up that you might need some type of fencing between their property and our property.
Right.
So we're not against putting something together and
Okay.
putting
So-
some type of fence there, yeah.
Yeah, we'll need to address that, whether it's fencing or screening. It needs to be suitable. In the case of Dunkin' Donuts, again, a completely different application. I believe they put up a 6-foot-high fence. Some people don't necessarily want to look at a fence. So
Yep.
some screening will have to be proposed. As far as process, Evan, if that was a condition on what this board's, we're going to ask that some screening be proposed if this moves forward, but
Yes, you could make that a condition and specify the type of screening that you think would be appropriate. Could be a fence, could be vegetation, could be a combination of the two.
Right.
The fence could be set, for example, the fence could be set in with vegetation on the other side, or vice versa.
board's thoughts on that? You've heard the comments.
I think it would be prudent.
Recommendations or opinions, and we've heard from the neighbor. I don't think there's any preference given as to whether a fence, but I think we've heard that they don't particularly want to look at a car dealership lot.
Well, certainly, I think a fence makes sense, and that's what the neighbors asked for. I suppose they could then plant something along their side of the fence, so they're not looking at a bare fence. And it would be up to the dealership to decide whether they
Right.
wanted to plant something on their side.
And I'm not
so that
sure.
they don't have a bare fence.
I'm just not sure that we need to prescribe what the solution would be. Perhaps we would require screening, and I might urge you to work with your neighbors as to figure out what's acceptable to them. I don't know that this board needs to tell you what to do, but
No, that's fine.
you've seen the neighbors.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that if you do it, just make it that the town staff reviews it and
Okay.
finds it
All right.
compatible with, consistent with the ordinance.
Judd has been my right-hand man, so for conditions of approval, I need somebody to note these as we go along, if this application, if we're moving toward that way. So somebody please take note of a reference that's suitable screening for the north side of the site along that lot line, between the abutting property, will need to be provided. And the town staff is going to review what the applicant has proposed, most likely after you've spoken with the neighbors.
Fine.
Should we consider the people on the south side as well? We haven't heard from them, but
Correct.
they may have the same concern.
Correct. The only thing I just heard was that there already is quite a suitable buffer.
That's a natural barrier.
Okay.
I'm not picturing it right now, but, yep, so
Cedar trees.
cedar trees are along that side, so.
Okay, so that's taken care of.
So I believe that would be sufficient.
Okay, while we're on the subject of screening, a 5-foot-high tree, if we go to the minimum, is shorter than I am. That's a mighty small tree. And one could get somewhat bigger trees without paying a fortune. And frequently, trees are sold by caliper, meaning the diameter of the trunk as opposed to how high they are. And we would need to get some information about what would be a good choice. A 2-inch caliper comes to mind. I don't know if anybody else, we could look into that as to what's standard.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and Krista, I believe it's within your province. The minimum standard in the ordinance is 1-inch caliper, 5 feet at planting, which is why I think that's what they put here. But if you believe the situation is such, because this is Main Street and there is a specific, buffer kind of standard for properties along along Main Street, I believe it would be in your province to require something more than that if that's...
All right, that's a very good point, Krista. Thoughts on that, and given the concerns we've heard from members of the public? Exceed the minimum, we can go to, whether it's 2-inch caliper, Krista knows more than all of us combined probably, but...
What would she
David may have an idea.
Right.
You have an idea?
So yeah.
Species is going to make a difference. If you're planting cedar, if it will present a better hedge than if you planted hardwood, so...
They're proposing red maple.
Yeah, maples were proposed.
Red maple isn't going to have any leaves in the winter, is it? Yep. So it's not going to be much of a hedge in the winter, or buffer.
So there was a combination of junipers and maple trees proposed. I'm not sure that...
Juniper is a conifer, so that would interspace, it would probably work out. It depends how it's put in.
3 foot high minimum. I guess, I'm not sure that we're changing the species as part of our plan. Your comment was just a larger diameter tree.
Larger diameter to
start.
To get something more substantial in there to start with.
Correct. You had your hand raised for a minute.
Yeah, only because it's a small area. You have 5 trees going in there. Just keep that in mind when you're talking about size of tree. Because it is a narrow, it's not that wide.
2 inches still isn't a very big tree.
Okay, I'm not a plant person,
That's
so.
That's
okay.
why,
That's the
she's
person,
our
okay.
expert on, and David as well.
But trees grow.
Yes, they do.
And they're probably going to grow at least a foot a year there. And pretty soon they're going to be, if they're not trimmed, they're going to be too big.
Right.
All right. Thoughts on that? We've heard from a couple of experts on the board, additional comments on whether we want to start larger. So they've got 5, they're eventually going to get bigger. Dave's shaking his head. So, other thoughts?
Start larger.
How far apart are, let's see, how long is that strip?
Can't read the scale on that. It's a
approximately
70-foot
80 feet.
strip.
It's
Yeah,
approximately
80 feet,
I
yeah.
believe.
With 5 maples.
And so roughly, what, 15 feet per tree? That's quite a bit of room. I mean, it'll be a while till they get too big for that.
All right, bigger trees are as proposed.
2-inch basil, 8 feet tall.
There we go.
Agree.
Mike?
That's fine. 2 inches.
Okay. I think we'll go with larger trees, please.
Okay.
Not large, larger.
No, I said larger, yeah. Very good. The island, and again, the island to the one side where 4 cars are, I'd make them all, plan them all the same size, please.
Yep.
All right, other items, traffic movement. We've heard concerns about Page Place, the opposing entrances, the one on the side, and we've heard a comment about there was an understanding with state police that they would let Page Place residents go. It's a concern. The applicant has acknowledged that and can perhaps direct left-turning traffic to turn right going towards town and then exit farther up. Is that correct? So that you would not be across Page Place. Is that
Right, they would use the north exit of the
correct?
property instead of the south exit to turn left.
Correct. So that would, I would understand signage to just say no.
Exactly, no left turn.
Right. So that would be a proposed solution. Sounds pretty simple to me.
Pretty simple.
A small sign directing people that park out back of the building, no left turns from that entrance. So they would scoot along the road going toward town
doesn't look like you can come from the back of the building.
You can. There's actually a paved space
Oh.
just around that island so that they do not have to enter onto Main Street and to go back in the building. So there's enough space. So signage to direct traffic to not turn left there. Does that sound reasonable?
Reasonable.
All right, so that's condition number
3.
Okay, number 3. Stuart mentioned, and I'm not sure if state police, there was a traffic island. I think any way you slice it, Main Street's a tough street to enter. They have 3 entrances there. I don't know how many cars state police had. I think it's always going to be an issue, so, you know, that's the way Orono is. I try to leave North Main onto Main Street, and I have just as many issues as the people from Page Place, so that's a lot of cars. I think you've heard that loud and clear. Other concerns from the applicant? I think that those were the primary ones. We have screening, we have traffic, we have a butter screening on the north side, signage to direct traffic.
Mr. Chairman, a clarification, is the no left-hand turn for both southern driveways?
I only understood it to be the one directly across from Page Place, but they do,
That's fine, that's fine. So turning off the property, they should go to the north.
right, and just loop around to the northernmost
Correct.
entrance. Okay. All right. Any other questions? I hope that captures most of what we heard. Again, as allowed use, we have things that we can require. I do think we're coming closer to meeting some of the intents of our comprehensive plan with some suitable screening along the Main Street corridor. Other comments? All right. With that, I do believe, we have a proposed findings of fact for this project. And I want to make really sure, because we've had a number of people come out, that we address all the items in our findings to capture concerns and what this board can control and cannot. Evan, do you have something that I could go off of? A proposed findings of fact.
Yes. I just want to emphasize, as always,
This is a starting point, yeah.
starting point, you can change any of them.
Correct.
Sometimes they just don't cooperate.
Again, to the board, please consider what we've heard this evening and the comments that, what we have discussed as I read these off, and whether any additions need to be made. I'm going to read in the record proposed findings of fact for Van Sickle Inc., 240 Main Street, site plan review dated July 27, 2018. Pursuant to Article 6, Section 18-177 of the Orono Code of Ordinances, the Orono Planning Board has considered the application of Van Sickle Inc. to add auto sales as a use at 240 Main Street, tax map 31-1, lot 56 in the Commercial 2 District, based on all evidence presented by the applicant, reviewing agencies, town departments, and the public. The Planning Board has found the following. Number 1, requirements of the district, that the proposed additional use of the property in addition to its current use as an office and a garage for reconditioning automobiles is an allowed use in the Commercial 2 District, and that the additional use will not involve new construction and will not affect building setbacks or other dimensional requirements of the site. Are there any concerns or additions that need to be made to number 1?
It's only mentioning reconditioning autos, not sales.
Correct. So, and I don't know if this was part of the amendment, but the proposed additional use of the property in addition to its current use as an office and a garage which we need to include sales in there somewhere?
Well, that, the proposed additional use is the sales.
Okay,
If you want to say that the
Okay, I
proposed
get you.
additional use of the property for auto sales.
okay, yeah, I think that would be good to clarify.
Also, it's 2016, not 2018.
Wow, as the years fly by. Please get that on the record. All right, with those additions, any other comments? All right, hearing no more, moving on, right, title and interest. Number 2, that the applicant is the owner of the property. Any issues? No. Number 3, compliance with town ordinances and codes, that the proposal does or is able to comply with the town ordinances and codes. Any additions or concerns there? Hearing,
Do we, the proposal as modified, I mean, we're going to put on the requirement for the screening to the side.
we'll have conditions.
That would be number 6, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Jeremy mentioned that I think we do cover buffers and screening, so perhaps any amendment or additions would be in that item. Buffers and screening down below. And we do cover parking in number 4.
Oh, okay. So those are separate, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Krista. So, number 3, generally, again, that the proposal does or is able to comply with town ordinances and codes. Are there any issues? Hearing none. Number 4, utilization of the site, that the additional use of the site for auto sales with up to 10 spaces for the display of automobiles will use the existing developed portion and will not entail significant physical alteration of the site. Any concerns or comments there? Hearing none. Number 5, traffic, parking, and access, that the proposed additional use will not significantly increase traffic volumes on the adjacent Main Street, will not significantly change access or traffic flows into and out of the site or affect pedestrian circulation, and will provide adequate parking for employees and customers utilizing the site. We discussed that. We're going to have conditions of approval. Are there any additional concerns or comments? Moving on, buffers and screening, number 6, that the site plan as amended, and again, we've attached, or we're considering conditions, provides a landscape buffer with appropriate plantings between Route 2, Main Street, and the automobile display area on the site, that this buffer, if properly maintained, will provide for visual separation between the road and will adequately excuse me, protect the visual character of this section of Route 2, and that there will be no other exposed non-residential storage on the site. We've amended the screening, we've added side lot screening, we've increased the screening on the front of the site. Are there any additional concerns? Hearing none. Moving on, stormwater management, the addition of this use on the site will not involve expanding pavement or other impervious elements on the site, will not involve significant regrading of the site, and will not increase the volume, rates, or patterns of stormwater runoff from the site. Are there any issues there? Hearing none. Water supply, sewage disposal, and electrical utilities is number 8, that the site will continue to be served by public water supply, public sewer, and electric utilities, and will not significantly change the site's current use of these utilities. Any issues there? Hearing none. Moving on, number 9, natural features, water quality, shorelands, that the additional use of the site will not alter natural features of the site and will not affect water quality, and that the property is not located in a shoreland area or flood zone. Any issues there? Hearing none. Number 10, hazardous, special, and radioactive materials, solid waste management, that the proposed additional use of the site will not generate hazardous, special, or radioactive materials and will not significantly add to or alter the management of solid waste generated on the site. Any concerns or comments? Hearing none. Number 11, historic and archaeological resources, that the proposed additional use of the property does not affect known historic or archaeological resources. Are there any issues there? Hearing none. Number 12, financial capacity, that the project will not require the installation or redevelopment of public infrastructure, and will not involve significant disturbance of the site for which completion or remediation and a related showing of financial and technical capacity would be required. Any comments or concerns? Hearing none. Signage. We discussed that at length, that the proposed signage will conform with the dimensional standards of the Land Use Ordinance. Any comments? Lastly, number 14, noise and lighting, that no new external lighting is proposed to serve the proposed additional use of the site, and that the use of the property will be within the noise limits of the town's noise ordinance. I did mention the 2 floodlights that are shown on the plan. You've understood the concern from the neighbors. It says no new external lighting?
Yes.
Okay. Any concerns or comments there?
Well, it seems to me that since the 2 new lights will be added, we shouldn't be saying no new external lighting is proposed.
I asked that question, and my understanding, as it was explained to me, that right now that they don't propose to do that. There was a safety issue, but at current, you're not proposing any new lighting.
Correct.
So that's what we're reading into the record. So, Evan, I don't know if that would be a condition. I mean, I saw them on the site plan. I asked the applicant, and at present, I don't want to approve something and have to go back and address that.
Yeah, I think we could do something, but at the risk of splitting hairs here.
Yes.
What this says is that no new external lighting is proposed to serve the proposed additional use of the site, i.e. the car
Which is auto
sales.
sales, all right.
I think those lights on the back would be there where they're not.
All right.
The sales would be here, is that correct? I mean, it's
Correct.
for the security of whatever is parked back there.
Right, if we deem it necessary, but again,
Right. You did hear from the public
yes, I
that
do,
they don't want any disturbance from that,
Correct.
so.
yes.
And they would have to be, by standard, in any case, they'd have to be downward
Right.
directed and shielded with no spillover. That could still be glary, though. I mean, so that's not always a perfect solution, but at least there are some standards in the ordinance about if there is any lighting.
Right.
So if there's concern about lighting, that, I mean, maybe you should address it along the lines of no new external lighting is proposed to serve the proposed additional use of the site in the front of the property, and that any additional lighting will be compliant with the town ordinance.
I think that's all we can do at this point. So, you've heard the concerns. I understand the safety aspect behind the building, but
Yes, and I don't know if you have a problem with people walking back up from the river or anything, so it may not even be necessary.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
all right. So that's another addition. Any other comments on noise and lighting? All right, hearing none. I do believe at this point we are ready for a motion. And Jeremy's writing.
I think I've got all 4 that we talked
Okay.
about. So if you can
Let's hear
direct
it.
me through how to do a motion.
All right. Here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna, it's easier just to. I move that we approve the site plan. These are the following.
Okay, I move that we approve a site plan review request by Van Sickle Incorporated to allow auto sales at 240 Main Street, tax map 31-1, lot 56, in the C2 zone, with the following 4 conditions. The first being suitable screening shall be erected along the north side of the property, which the town staff will review prior to construction. The second, the board's requiring a 2-inch basal area or 8-foot tall tree in the front island area to be planted instead of the 1-inch or 5-foot tree as proposed. 3, signage to direct traffic to exit with no left turn when exiting from either the parking area of the business or the entrance. And 4, no new lighting shall be placed on the front of the property, and any new lighting on the rear shall comply with the town ordinance.
Okay. I would suggest that instead of saying 2-inch basal area, that we say 2-inch caliper. That's how it's usually.
Yeah, you really should say 2-inch diameter.
2-inch diameter.
There we go.
Yeah, that's the
Caliper is
same
a-
thing.
is
Yeah.
a thing you measure diameter with, so
All right.
misused term.
2-inch diameter or 8
Yeah.
feet tall?
Yeah.
Any other comments or corrections? All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. All those in favor? All right, we have, and I'm going to ask the board's opinion on this. We have two other proposed hearings this evening. Both of them are having to do with land use ordinances. We're at 9:35. We do have to have another meeting in August, which is primarily going to be ordinances. I'm not aware of any other items on the agenda, so we have to come back anyways. So my question to the board is, given that we have old business as well, I am wondering whether members of the board would prefer, at this point, to perhaps just move them, or do we open a public hearing? I'm just thinking procedurally that
Yes, Mr.
I don't want to go there tonight if we don't have to.
Chairman, I wonder if you might ask if there's anyone in the audience here to speak to any of those land use ordinance amendments.
That's a really good comment. Is there anyone here, we have two public hearings this evening. One's a proposed amendment to the land use ordinance to provide for self-storage facilities is distinct from warehousing. The second item is a proposed amendment to the land use ordinance, amending definitions and districts for types of travelers lodgings. And we had a continuation from a discussion at our last meeting for the proposed land use ordinance amendment, discussing purposes and districts of section 18-106. It had to do with schedule of uses concerning land uses and dimensional standards in the C1, C2, and the EDZ districts. Is there anybody here that showed up this evening that would like to comment on these? That's going to dictate whether we push them off into next month or not. Nobody's here for these land use ordinances. All right. Thank you, Evan, for that suggestion. So, thoughts from the board on whether we want to jump into these, or since we're coming back in August, tackle all three then?
Do it in August.
Agreed.
I like August.
4th or 5th?
All right. Sounds good.
You need to propose to table the public hearing to your August meeting.
Again, procedurally, I always have to be refreshed. A motion or a proposal from the board, so I can make this proposal? Or do I need a motion second, then? Yeah.
You need a motion and a second.
All right, there we go.
I make a motion that we table those two until August.
Two, and then the old business as well? That's a continuation of the proposal.
And the old business as well.
Second the motion.
Very good. All those in favor? Good. Jumping on to new business. We're going to look at a sketch plan review by M&M Truck Sales, Inc. for an 8-lot subdivision on Union Street. Again, this is just for public's benefit. This is just a preliminary step along the path to take a look at the application for this proposed project and decide on a few items. We're looking at it, whether it's a major, minor subdivision, talk about description of streets, those kinds of things, but there is also going to be continued opportunity to review this application, and there's going to be a preliminary application after this, and then we proceed to a final. So this is the sketch plan stage, but it is an opportunity to hear from the public and hear what the applicant is proposing. So at this time, I'd like to invite the applicant up to give us a summary of what is proposed.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Jim Kaiser with Kaiser & Kaiser Company. I'm here representing M&M Truck Sales tonight. Also here is Maury and Mary Thayer, owners of M&M. We're proposing an 8-lot residential subdivision on Union Street, and the owners have approximately 30 acres that they purchased recently down at the end of the street and along the street. We're taking this as a slow process with the market the way it has been over the last number of years. What we want to do is come in and do a portion of the property so that we don't overextend the development of the property to begin with. So we're looking at completing an 8-lot subdivision. One of the lots will be on public sewer, be the first one under the ordinance. We're required to do that. We do have soils information on that, which we'll present more on in preliminary plan approval, or the process. And then the rest of the lots will be on subsurface wastewater disposal systems. The Orono VZ Water District has a 6-inch main running down the street, so all the lots will be accessing public water directly onto the 6-inch main. There's plenty of water pressure and water supply in the area, so that's not a concern for the district at this point in time. We're keeping the lots all complying with the ordinance. They'll all exceed 30,000 square feet for the MDR zone. Some of them extend up to about 37,000 square feet. We have one culvert along the road that we're kind of keeping as a location for a sideline, so we're kind of got the spacing of the lots conditional upon that, so we can get drainage off that culvert and improve a little bit of drainage right around the road down in that area, and run it back towards the railroad spur. All the lot pretty much drains towards the railroad spur, and then across towards Johnny Macbrook, and the main line railroad back in there. So, like I say, it's a 8-lot sketch phase right now. We'll be looking to come back to the board. We'll probably be making submission for preliminary application in a week or two to get in line for the next available meeting, I think, which would be the September meeting, if I remember correctly, and then present the full preliminary application at that point in time. So we're really looking for direction and comments from the board that they may have in reviewing where we are right now, and look forward to continuing the process with the board.
We do understand that you have widened, or proposed to widen the right-of-way, offering up.
Yes, we
Yeah.
proposed 5 feet on
Yeah.
that to kind of get that out to the 50-foot standard. It'd be 5 feet on our side, so that rather than trying to move the center line of the roadway, if we went that way, we offered 5 feet on that. We hope the town will be receptive to that. And we will do that as a fee interest. We're not going to do it as easement. We'll give that deeded area right to the town.
Okay. Any initial questions to the applicant? Evan has, again, provided us a summary of town staff review. Right. Evan, could you let us know what town staff has reviewed and items that you've identified?
Sure. This is, as explained, a straight residential, single-family, I assume single-family house lot subdivision along an existing street, so no new streets are proposed, no extension of public utilities is proposed, no extension of street or no improvement to Union Street itself is proposed, except for the providing a 5-foot strip along Union Street that would widen it to a 45-foot right-of-way. Right now, that right-of-way at Union Street is 40 feet. The standard in the town, if a street were being built new today, is 50 feet. They're proposing to take 5 feet on their side. So should there ever be the opportunity to go 5 feet on the other side, it would be the full 50 feet. At this point, there is no turnaround at Union Street at this point. It's just a dead end. What's happening now is that I gather city vehicles that have to go down there to plow or pick up trash and so forth need to, it looks like the pattern is to go on to the private property at the end of Union Street, which is now owned by M&M Truck Sales, to turn around. At present, there is no sidewalk anywhere along Union Street, all the way up to Margin. And this is, I think it's important to note that this is a fairly long dead-end street. And that is naturally, it's an existing situation. And development is allowed along it, according to our ordinance. Union Street could not ever be extended more than another 2,500 feet, but it's already a pretty long dead-end street. Two things that are always considered in those situations and are worthy of discussion with the applicant is, first of all, is some kind of even temporary until other plans are known, turnaround able to be provided here, whether it's a hammerhead or something on the property where the turnaround happens now or something, as more development comes to the street. And secondly, we are always looking for possible ways to interconnect. When there is new development, is there adjacent property that might serve as a point of interconnection to improve public safety primarily, fire access, emergency vehicle access. Should there be a tree across the road or a fire or something like that that would otherwise block that access. And there is one point of possibility, and it's really a matter of discussion, whether it's here or at some later point as their plans evolve. But there is a former railroad right-of-way that was a spur off to Ayers Island, no more in use. It's obviously owned by the railroad, but that is one place that there might be requested, per our ordinance, a connection, not a built connection, but the rights, a right-of-way, that should there at some time in the future be the opportunity to acquire and build a local relief.
The railroad still owns that?
Excuse me?
The
Yes,
railroad
still owns that, yes. It would allow for a bypass of the lower end of Union Street. There aren't an awful lot of other ways to connect up because of the railroad, the main line railroad that runs through that part of town. So that's a matter of discussion, and whether that should happen now, sometime in the future, if at all. And then finally, it is important, as Mr. Kaiser's noted, that this is only a little over 6 acres of a 30-acre total holding. Preliminary plan will require the presentation of some sense of what might be involved on the rest of that land. And I don't know how ripe that is. I don't know how far along they are in their thinking. But the preliminary application must have some discussion of that so that you can help evaluate what kind of cumulative impact there might be that needs to be understood now. And so those were my comments that I think relate to the sketch plan.
Thank you, Evan. Just for the boards, we have some newer members and some that have been here a while. We've been pretty consistent as a board trying to promote the interconnectivity, and recall that was part of our comprehensive plan, trying to minimize the dead-end street network that this town has gone down that road, I guess, for a long time now, and trying to, I guess, mitigate, not past sins, but how things have been developed has been of key interest. So interconnections, and then from a safety standpoint, you know, I would expect that the fire department would weigh in on some sort of turnaround, an existing turnaround where they're just going on private property, happens to be owned by, it sounds like M&M Trucking, the same owner, but we've usually tried to rectify some of those situations in past projects, so we've been fairly consistent about that. So I guess questions for the applicant. We do have a bunch of people that have showed up tonight. I appreciate you sitting through all of that. I will open this up in a little bit so we can get some preliminary comments, but again, please understand that there's 2 other meetings after that, so we're trying to keep things fairly general, and we'll dive in pretty deeply once we see more of the application at the next stage. But questions from this board to the applicant? I'm going to ask you, what about the Hammerhead cul-de-sac,
I'm more than
anything
welcome
proposed?
to. You know, interconnectivity, Evan and I have talked about it, and certainly we'll be looking at that, and we will, as our first step, when we always look at property, depending on size of the property, is to look at the big master plan. And so bringing in a sketch of long-term plans is not an issue with us, because we did do a master plan for this, so that's fine with us, and we see that through the ordinance, and that's a good aspect of planning for the town overall. So we will have that, and we will show some interconnectivity on that. It's a tough area down there, as Evan pointed out, and so, but we'll make an attempt to try to, give us an option in the long run, or give the town an option in the long run, so that there is some connectivity. But that will probably come down in at least the next phase. If we take this in a multi-phase, I could see potentially 3 phases involved with this property going forward. This being the first phase, another phase would extend the road a little bit further, and then the third phase may go down towards the river frontage on it. Each step has its own complications associated with it that we'll have to overcome, but I could see it as a multi-step process before the board and over the next coming years. As far as a turnaround, I think basically the town technically has prescriptive rights on it already, because they've been using it for so long. But I think we can put together, at least show it on our preliminary plan, a formal easement around that area that we probably give as part of that 5-foot strip to the town, so that is formalized, and probably put it in there as a temporary, so if the road's extended, then it automatically kind of drops out when the next phase is accepted by the town from that standpoint. And it's also good to note too, if you looked in the sketch plan, you see that the road actually, in the sharp turn coming around down at the bottom, actually crosses M&M's property. And so we're actually gonna move the right-of-way over far enough in that area and give more land in that area so that it would comply with the 50-foot right-of-way should it be needed. We'll give it so that we're 25 feet off of the center line of the road, so that there's adequate space on that side going through that curve also. So that'll be part of our deed over to, or our proposal deed over to the town.
In discussions with staff, and again, I'm just going to refer to what we've talked about in the comprehensive plan, the walkability, the safety aspect of it. So there's no existing sidewalk on Union Street. I don't know if that was part of any discussions, but we spent a lot of time talking about that as part of our vision for the town's future and current roads. So I don't know if that was brought up to town staff.
Well,
I don't think we have the space. I'm just looking at the right-of-way.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's narrow, the additional 5 feet would help along those lines, but it would be a sidewalk to nowhere. There is no sidewalk at this point.
Right.
So there may be, it's a matter of discussion. Right now, it doesn't look very feasible for a sidewalk beyond this point, but.
Right, I think we've wrestled with that point, though, sidewalks to nowhere with other subdivisions. And I don't know that, any precedent has been set, but one of the gentlemen that was here for our first public hearing, there's a sidewalk to nowhere out in his subdivision, as it was called when I first joined the board. So I've heard that referred to before.
Right.
So I'm just not sure, given our comprehensive
plan. There may be a way to
plan.
understand the trail system and things like that, as time goes on, because that trail system may provide some pedestrian alternatives.
Mhm.
But anyways, it's a matter of discussion.
Okay.
Right now, there is no sidewalk there, it's fairly narrow. I don't know, I talked with Rob Bjerkstad to understand whether that might be achievable, beyond the subdivision, and it did not seem likely, but
Okay.
we're only in the very early stage of this, so we might come to different understandings as time goes on.
I just have to keep referring to the document we just spent a long time on, and that
Yep.
walkability aspect was a key item. Other questions? All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Again, please consider that this is step one of many.
My name is Roxanne Sinclair, and I live on Brook Street,
Yep.
abutting the property that they have bought. Most of that down there is wetland. There's a lot of wildlife. A lot of people use that for walking their dogs, ATV trails, all that. And if you're going to try to use an exit coming off from Ayers Island, are you going to replace the Ayers Island Bridge? Because that's been posted, no traffic.
I believe the reference was just to the railroad spur that connects to Ayers Island Bridge, is just looking at the map, so it would just be the railroad bed that's closer to,
The railroad bed that runs behind these 8 lots.
right.
Right, but the
and
railroad
that-
bed is gone. They have taken that out.
Yes, that's a good thing, but the right-of-way exists.
Yeah.
And what may be in discussion is a way to connect the lower part of Union Street to that right-of-way, should there have to be a relief access at some time in the future
Yep.
around that lower end of Union Street. So it would just it would stop at Union Street, it wouldn't go beyond Union Street.
There's so many dead ends in the town, and just rather than from a safety standpoint, that's part of what we are tasked with doing, is looking whether there's a connectivity so you can have some looping. It's better for safety, better for utilities, but.
There isn't.
Okay, yeah.
Also, I understand that where we live down there is agriculture. Am I correct?
No,
Shows here, medium-density residential is the zone that's been identified where this project's gonna be right in the middle, so, not to my knowledge that it's in.
It's MDR. It was forest agriculture at one time, but that got
It was
changed.
always farming, right?
That got changed a number of years ago.
Yep.
The medium-density residential.
So now they have to meet the standards of the current ordinance, and that, again, similar to that previous application, that's what we can review, the standards that are in place right now.
And all the traffic that's going to be added, we have a hard enough time coming out of that hill, coming out of Island Avenue.
Right.
And my other main concern is you're going to put single-family dwellings, correct?
That's what's proposed, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of Island Avenue, all of Margin Street now is single-family residence. They're all occupied by college students.
Mm-hmm.
And we really don't want that behind us.
Yep.
So that is one of the things I think you should consider. Because there's no way to keep them out.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying?
We talked about that issue with the comp plan too. Again, we have to review an application, because it's hard for us to predict the future, but, he says single-family dwellings, that's
Right.
what's proposed in the lots, and that's what we review, but there's been a lot of comments on property values and students, and that's a townwide concern.
Right, but I
we
mean-
try to follow the ordinance as best we can and meet what the town council has given us to try to
I
follow.
understand where
Yeah.
you're setting,
Yeah.
but as homeowners down there, we don't want that riffraff down there.
Yep.
We've got
Okay.
enough from the
Yep.
bottom of the hill up. We don't need any more,
Okay.
okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? You sat through all this. Good for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello again. Proper time now. Julia McGuire at 38 Union Street. I have a couple of questions. I know it's the preliminary stages. I also would like to put on record my concern about the traffic pattern changing in the neighborhood and the challenges with emergency planning, potential safety, and nearly doubling the number of families on the block. The lack of sidewalks has been addressed. I'd also like to echo that as a concern with increasing the number of cars going up and down the street. I'm also curious as to whether there are going to be covenants and whether for the subdivision, are there going to be particular building requirements as for square footage, garages, what specifically constitutes the size of a single-family dwelling, and how cleared the lots might be. Will they be completely raised? And if there are particular covenants of the requirements for this subdivision, might the residents in the area have a copy of whatever is going to be proposed?
Okay.
And I think those are my questions as of now. I'll leave it at that.
Those things are typically included either in a preliminary or sometimes the covenants might be in that last stage, but
Okay.
usually that information, I'm not necessarily sure on the amount of clearing per lot, but any proposed easements, covenants, restrictions, anything are usually part of the application.
Okay, and so that'll be
See.
conveyed to local homeowners?
You
or
will
will
get
that
a
be public
notice
hearing?
anytime, well, for both applications, for public hearings, as we need to have one for the preliminary plan, we'll need to have one for the final plan. You heard the applicant talk about, well, then he's mentioning phases for what might happen in the future, but this board will have 2 more hearings on this, and all the butters will be notified, I don't know, within so many,
Necessary by within 500 feet.
500
Notified.
feet, so,
Mr. Chairman, could I just so there's no misunderstanding?
Yes.
That if there are covenants proposed, the chairman's right, usually those are stated on the plan or in the materials. The town ordinance does not require any covenants.
Okay.
We don't require a minimum 3,000 square foot home or something like that, and we don't require garages, and to some extent, the planning board can review whether there are significant trees, over 24-inch diameter, for example, and in some form of a manner require those to be at least reviewed and determine whether they should be saved. But beyond that, we don't, if there is no requirement for a covenant for public access, for trails, for things, we might, require covenants for interconnection, that sort of thing, as we've just discussed. But in terms of the quality of the homes, other than meeting building codes and so forth, the town has no requirements, no minimums for that sort of thing.
right, there's a whole list, the application process, and it's a really great read if you want to dive into the ordinances, but it lines out all the things that we review as part of the planning board process, so feel free to visit town staff if you want to understand what items we are typically looking at.
Thank you. And could somebody clarify just one more thing? The discrepancy that I may have misheard between, you said that there wouldn't be more than 20 to 25 feet extended beyond the road. And then I heard that in phase 2 and 3, that there might be a plan to extend the road further. How does
Mr.
that?
Chairman, if I may, in the preliminary subdivision plan, which will, I believe that Mr. Kaiser said they're proposing to submit soon in order to be on the September planning board agenda, they have to provide some concept. If a property owner owns more adjacent land than what is presently being proposed for subdivision, they must present a general concept of what might happen, what might be proposed in the future for the rest of their holdings. On the road length, a new subdivision cannot have a dead-end road of more than 2,500 feet. So, that's pretty long. but that's what the standard is. So, any more than that requires an interconnection, but there's also a requirement for interconnection to adjacent undeveloped land, and that railroad right-of-way might qualify as such, just to provide some looping possibilities in the future.
Thank you.
So stay tuned.
Okay.
Other comments?
Good evening. Alan Netto, 104 Union Street. I have a couple issues, maybe questions. There is a active eagle's nest on that property. I have letters dated November 9, 2005, which fell under the state of Maine as far as the endangered species and threatened species habitat. I think that should be looked into also before that this is, you should have copies of that here at the town. Okay? The other thing is, you're talking about using the old rail bed as far as a looping thing. Well, that's all wetlands on each side of that. So I think that would be a tough sell to put a roadway in. Because we have an aquifer right there along that rail bed. The traffic, it would be an issue. We have a hard time getting out of Island Avenue now. Depending on how many properties they actually develop, the proposal now is for that, but how many more? And if there's no other way out, I mean, just that looping wouldn't do it, because it would kind of put a bottleneck at almost the turn of Union Street, where it turns by the boat launch. You know, there's a few issues. The sidewalks are another thing. People are going to be walking. They do now, and roadway is quite narrow. But, yeah, you should take that in consideration and look at that.
Very good.
That is an issue.
Yep, thank you very much. Other comments? Okay.
Hi, I'm Paul Schrader. I live on Hamlin Street. I just have a couple questions for clarification. Is this entire parcel, you know, the whole three-stage build-out or whatever it is the entire parcel that is involved here zoned medium-density residential?
Yes, a portion of a zone would be zoned shoreland zoning. Along the river, there would be, I think it's probably limited residential shoreland zoning, but it's otherwise MDR, yes.
And then that brings up my second question was, does this parcel actually extend to the river?
Well, there are two parcels here. One is a 9.2 acre parcel, which is just on that far side of the non-river side of Union Street. And what's the subdivision is proposed within that 9.2 acres, taking 6.3 acres of those 9.2. Then the adjacent parcel is 20-some acres, I think Mr. Kaiser said, so that the grand total was around 30 acres. That is at this point not proposed as part of the subdivision. There is no development proposal. The preliminary plan will require them to show if they have concepts for that, or the board needs to have some understanding of what might be proposed there, but it's not going to be a ruling on that or making any decisions on that as time. But it would be nice to know things about what the natural resource and sensitivities are, what the historic resources might be back there, what kind of road system are they talking about there, what generally, how many, even though this was conceptual at that point, because they're not asking for any approvals for that. It's just for the board to be able to better evaluate these 8 lots in some larger context. But yes, that the rest of that 30 acres goes down to the river.
And then about how much of river frontage is involved in that parcel? I understand now there are two parcels, and this isn't part of the actual application here, but how many feet of river frontage are we looking
Maybe you
at?
could ask Mr. Kaiser, I don't know the.
Yeah, I don't, let's ask the applicant if he happens to know that. Again, this is way out as far as
This is-
potential.
Yeah, this is out.
If you have an answer.
It's about 1,200 feet, if I recall, along the river for
Thank you.
that secondary parcel down there.
Right.
Yeah, just to follow up my comment, which is, I understand that this is all far out, but, you know, there's a concept here that is probably not as far out as we're thinking at the moment, so thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. I'll take a couple more, and then we'll,
How are you today?
doing well. You?
Tony Netto, 112 Union Street. The woman, Brent Patricia Singer, I hear that's on the the railroad side that we're talking about, goes across Dryers Island, Ayers Island. I hear they bought that piece that goes across there. They're not here to verify that, but I have heard, and they have been working on that area. So, something you want to look into anyways.
Okay. I mean, again, if they propose something, we'll just evaluate that, but
Yeah.
we don't know yet, but the connectivity, whether it's a railroad bed
Well,
that goes through a wetland, I mean, we're just looking at options, and if there's an opportunity to connect that's going to improve safety in an area for any project, that's something that this board is going to look at.
I heard that these people bought that right away across there. That goes from the road, from Union Street to Stryers, where it stopped.
We might have an answer on that. Can you shed any light on that?
He is correct, that it's a portion between the river and Union Street that was bought.
Okay.
The portion that runs from Union Street back to the main line is still owned by the railroad.
Okay.
So there's just a small, what is it, probably a couple hundred feet that runs from Union Street down to the river towards Ayers Island, is where it actually crossed over onto Ayers Island
Okay.
in the back. That portion was
All right,
purchased.
so we'll see any proposal in the next stage anyways. Very good. Last call, yeah?
Hi, Robin Fisher, 112 Union. I just have a question. Is there a number of residents or houses that determine when you need another entrance to an area? Because there's only that one street going down.
Right. I think, Evan, he mentioned the length, if you could shed
Yes,
any
yes.
more light.
Within a subdivision, this is at the end of right now, this project is at the end of an existing street, so, and they're not proposing any new streets.
Mhm.
But within a subdivision, there cannot be a length of more than 2,500 feet or serving more than 20 homes without a way to connect, without an interconnection.
Isn't that
But
due
but
to fire safety?
that would start from the end of Union Street. If, you know, that,
Right.
if part of the 30 acres involves extending the street, it couldn't be more than 2,500-foot extension, or more than 20 homes along that without an interconnection.
Wasn't that distance related to fire safety and access for a hose? I heard that sometime way back when.
Yes, I mean, these things
Yeah.
are all,
Yeah, all right.
yes, it's a long run.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with an existing right-of-way.
Right.
For land that has, frontage along that right-of-way.
Right.
And so the limitations have to do with the construction of a new street for a subdivision.
So right now, the number of houses, in answer to your question, there's an existing road frontage to that parcel. And they have to meet the road frontage standards for each lot. And what
Just
they've.
the lots that they're building?
And for what they've proposed for the existing length of Union Street. So that's what we've looked at so far. And again, Phase 2, Phase 3, that's beyond what's proposed, but we'll ask those questions as part of the preliminary plan. But right now, as I look at it, the number of lots is dictated by the amount of road frontage that's there right now.
Just on the ones they're building?
Yes.
Not on all the existing houses that are
Oh,
down
Their,
there?
their side of the road, that whole run of Union Street that's already a long run, but they have to have a minimum lot frontage along Union Street, and that kind of tells them how many lots they can
Okay, I'm
fit
just
along there.
concerned that there's
Yeah.
going to be so many people down there. If there was some disaster or something, you're going to have 50, 60.
Right. Again, right now, just looking at this, we're going on the medium-density residential standards that, again, the town council approved way back before we were going, so that's what we have to review, and if they show that they have sufficient frontage along that road, that meets one of our reviewed criteria.
Okay, it doesn't matter, there's only one way out to Route 2.
I mean,
Jump in.
Mr. Chairman, it's certainly a concern.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's one of the first concerns we mentioned to the property owner. We look carefully at the ordinance, so we talk to fire department and that sort of thing. And during the preliminary review, when we see the preliminary plan, there will be a lot of comments from staff and so forth on it. But this is an existing right-of-way. And let's assume that Union Street wasn't built decades ago, before the ordinances. Let's say it was built in 2000, and that there were 15 homes along it right now. And now the developer came along and said, I want to build 6 more homes. Because that was part of a new subdivision and a new road serving that subdivision, it couldn't be more than 2,500 feet or 20 homes without an interconnection. This is different because this is a long-standing road that was built long before there was a subdivision ordinance even, and with existing frontage. So the number of dwelling units I'm not going to say it's not a concern. We look heavily to the fire department to say, what's the issue there? Are there things there that concern you, that allow you to, that you caution the planning board about? At this point, in the email, in the comments that we have from our deputy fire chief, is that the water pressure is very good, the hydrants are good, and that at this point, he is satisfied that this is, and we'll get a formal comment during the preliminary plan, so this is just all very at the beginning of the process. So my guess is that he won't have troubles with these 8 lots.
Okay.
We don't know about what the future is. At this point, nobody on staff or the board has an idea of what may be thought of for the remaining 30 acres. When the preliminary subdivision plan is given, we'll have some larger concept of that. And, fire safety is always an issue. And there are some standards. The way they apply to an existing, long-standing, pre-existing, I should say, dead-end road is different than if there was a brand-new subdivision coming off of Main Street, like Page Place was, or one of those.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, last one.
Kathy Nettle, 104 Union Street. I'm concerned in what kind of places you're looking to put these, what kind of dwelling is these going to be? Are these going to be nice homes? Are they going to be apartment buildings? Are they going to be college people?
Right.
What are we looking at here?
Right.
And you're talking about 3 phases with no answers. I mean, what is this?
This is real early in the process, as we understand it,
That's why we're nervous. We're really
Right.
nervous
Oh,
down there.
right.
What's going to happen to us?
Right, all we've got on the table now is a sketch plan review for 8 lots for single-family
Well, he
homes.
said he was willing to tell us. What is he looking towards? Is he
Well-
looking towards a college-type housing?
We don't know that right now. It says single-family homes, and I'm sure as part of the application, these questions are gonna come up again. So,
Nobody else can build on the wetlands.
there's limitations that,
Yeah.
they have to follow all the rules, have to, deal with state requirements, deal with town requirements. So those issues will be addressed.
Well, we've all
But-
seen in Orono, all these big places
Oh,
go up
yeah,
to the college. We don't want that down there,
Okay,
and we want to stop it before it happens. So we'd like to know what they're proposing. What
Okay.
kind of residential buildings are you thinking of? Is this gonna be for people like us raising families, or is it gonna be the college people?
Well, we'll have more information during that preliminary subdivision. I think we've heard a lot of the same concerns tonight, and we appreciate everybody coming out. But there's going to be a preliminary application submitted.
Now
And
we're
you
talking
can-
3 phases, you know?
We'll
I mean,
find out, we'll find out more. I appreciate your concern, but, I mean, we only know so much. This is as far as we usually go during sketch plan, and we'll learn more a little bit later. Thank you. All right, I'm going to close that. Last comments from the board. I do think Evan's review comments talked about, we know that Lot 1 is proposed with public sewer. We've talked about a future connection. We haven't seen what the options are. We're going to see that next time. I think he's heard loud and clear that concepts for future development, what Phase 2, Phase 3 might hold. You've heard a lot of comments on, we're going to want to hear about that. We are going to expect to see a turnaround option, whatever you're going to propose. Timing, you had mentioned that you anticipate the September meeting to come in with
That's what we're
preliminary.
hoping for.
Okay, so you heard it here, you're going to get a postcard, but, tentatively, we might see or this board might review a preliminary application in September. What are we at? Third, was it?
Third week.
Third Wednesday of the month. So just keep an eye out for those of you that have an interest in this application. And other than the other comments, any last questions for our applicant? Evan, remind me on sketch plan, please.
Yes, sketch plan, your job is to classify it as a major or minor subdivision. By definition, it is a major subdivision. If there were a new road, you would have to classify the road, but no new road is proposed. So I think it's just a motion to formally classify it as a major subdivision, which requires a preliminary and a final subdivision stage.
Good. Can I have that motion, please?
I move that we classify the Riverside Estates at Union Street, tax map 31-2, lot 1, as a major subdivision.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Any other comments? All those in agreement? Very good. See you in a couple months. I'm trying to find my agenda.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Thanks to all of you for sticking through this. There'll be more to come. Next item is discussion. Again, we tabled 3 items tonight. I'm going to ask the board to review what Evan provided, the definitions, again, some of the discussion, so please be prepared for our August meeting to hammer on those. Evan, do you know that we're going to have any other ordinances in addition to these coming out of council? Can I ask for quiet on the way out? We're almost done here, please. All right.
What did you say?
All right. Can I ask for some quiet? We're almost done with this meeting. We just got to be able to get this on record. Evan, do we have any other proposed ordinances that we're going to be reviewing? Or just
think
these 3 that we've tabled?
These are the 3, but hang on. I happen to keep a chart. Keep myself straight. These will be the only 3.
Very good. So,
there are a couple we will be moving. Once these are under our belts, we are already starting to move towards some of the bigger ticket items.
Okay.
That will take longer to prepare and discuss preliminarily with the council before they get referred to you, but there will be, the Main Street Overlay District. We're actively now doing the background work on that.
Yep.
There are half dozen big-ticket items out of the comprehensive plan that will probably take months to.
All right. So something to look forward to, folks. Tune in later. All right. Thank you, Evan. So that was discussion. Last item is adjournment. Can I have a motion?
Will we adjourn
Second.
Very good. Discussion? All those in favor?
Jeremy, second. Who was the second?
Dave and I both did. Two. I'm gonna steal that back. though.
Yeah, get that back.